Hello and welcome to Genesis, the language of creation. I am Rabbi Rafi Mallet, everybody's Rebbe. We have here in the studio with us Lisa, Abigail, and Colin. We have in the YouTube live comments so far, we have Liz, we have Tim Flanagan, and so far that's it. 3 people watching on YouTube, 3 with us in the studio, and that's all very nice. I'd like to give a shout out to my channel members, but unfortunately I forgot to cue that up beforehand. So maybe I'll save it for next time. But it's I feel like for the month of June we should do a shout out to the members. I just didn't prepare the names ahead of time. Whoopsies. I meant to. See, because that's why I said that. And I was like, wait, I don't have my list. Okay, Linda Hill is here. Welcome. But I'll remind everyone, I feel like everyone who's watching right now, either in the chat or in the studio, or you're already a channel member. But anyone who's watching this possibly on a replay, please consider becoming a channel member. For the price of a coffee every month, you can support the channel. If you'd like to support the channel more generously, you can donate using one of the links in the video description below. Speaking of which, we'd like to once again acknowledge the sponsorship of Colin Martin in memory of the 2 individuals who were assassinated, unfortunately, the Israeli embassy workers in D.C., Yaron Lishinsky, I think I said this time Lushinsky, I looked up as Lishinsky, Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgram. Actually, what's interesting is that Milgram is kind of a name in my family, sort of. I don't know if she's related to me or not, but my mother's mother, that would be my great grandmother, was born Mulgrum, Mulgrum, but it's sort of alternatively spelled Milgram. You can find that I'm doing genealogy research in like early census records from the family when they immigrated from Poland. Sometimes it's spelled Milgram and sometimes Mulgrim. I think there's like 3 different spellings in depending what year of the census. There's Milgram, Milgrim, Milgram, Milgram, and then ultimately Mulgrum, Mulgrum, which ended up being the final spelling. So when I hear the name Milgram, I think of my own family, so it kind of hits me, Speaking of which, my mother's father's yard site, that is the day commemorating the day he passed away, was today. Today, the 14th day of the Hebrew month of Sivan. It ends this evening, right around nowish, as the sun goes down here in Houston. But we'd like to also dedicate the class in his memory. His name is Mordechai ben Eliyahu HaKohen. And in addition, we had a generous donation from an anonymous donor who wished to dedicate the following message: with deepest thanks and appreciation for all you do to spread the light of Judaism and for all you do for the Noahide community. So I thank you very much for that kind message. And with no further ado, I suppose we could start the class. A reminder, artscroll.com/Rebbe Rafi, REBBIRAFI, to shop at Artscroll, buy the very finest in Judaic products, and also allow me to earn a commission from the sale at the same time. T Bishop is here. Welcome. All the best to you. The book, Abigail was telling me about a book before we started the stream called Book of Genesis with Commentary and Insights by 500 Sages and Mystics by Yankee Tauber. Okay, that's the book. Thank you for sharing. She is enjoying the book, so if it appeals to you, there's a title for you. Book of Genesis with Commentary and Insights by 500 Sages and Mystics by Yankee Tauber. Thank you, Abigail, for sharing that title. Okay, we now have 8 people watching on YouTube with which is good. Like, it takes a few minutes for people to get the notification that we're starting and to join in. So we're good. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and put the text up on the screen. Okay, let's see if we can use this view. All right. So we had last week, verse 6, Vayomer Elohim yehi rakia betoch hamayim. And God said, let there be a rakia, a firmament in the middle of the water, or in the midst of the water. And we talked about what a firmament is. I said my favorite translation from Safaria for rakia was this extended surface. Right? We talked about that. Vihi mavdil bein mayim lamayim. And it shall be a divider between water and water. So you want to know more about that? Tune into that wasn't last week, 2 weeks ago. Last week was Shavuot, but the class 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago. Now we're going to move on to verse number 7. And before I begin, I will entertain any comments or questions. Okay, remember, my policy is interrupt at any time. I'll do my best to respond. Okay, so we begin like this. It's here's what it says. It says here, Vaya'as Elohim. Okay, let's just start with that. Vaya'as Elohim. So we have God over here. We have some familiar elements. This Vayud Shoresh, not Shoresh, prefix, which is and he, past tense. So in here, the subject being God, and God did what? And we have these two letters here, ayin and sin. Ignore what it says here in the Safaria. It's not accurate. Okay, ayin sin is the shoresh here. Now, as everybody knows, a shoresh needs to have 3 letters. So one of the 3 letters of the shoresh is missing. And as we mentioned before, reviewing the material, the 4 letters that typically will go missing, as it were, in a conjugated verb are the letters yud, vav, nun, and hey. So one of those 4 letters is missing from this shoresh that has these 2 letters, ayin and sin. I will just put it out there. Does anyone know what the missing letter is? Okay, you don't have to know. That's what I'm here for. Okay, in this case, the missing letter is a hey. And the shoresh on its own would be the letters ayin, sin, hey. Okay, and the next question is, what does that shoresh mean? Ayin, sin, hey. You could sort of enunciate it as asa. What would that mean? Does anyone know that shoresh? So it means to do. It's the verb to do, or to make. To do or to make. Okay, so this, again, these 2 letters with a hey after it is the shoresh asa, to do or to make. So here, Vaya'as Elohim means and God made. And what did God make? Et harakia. So et indicates the object. So the word that follows et is the object. The subject is God. The verb is made. What did he make? He made this harakia, definite article, the what? The rakia, which we just had in the previous verse. And God said, let there be a rakia in the midst of the water, and it shall divide between water and water. So that was his pronouncement. And here we have the result of the pronouncement is that God made the rakia. Okay. And God made the rakia. That is the first statement there. Any questions? Golden Gun says do. The verb asa, ayin, sin, hey, it means to do. That's correct. Questions or comments? Okay. So let's move on. Vayavdel. Now this should be easy for you. I just cheated for you a little bit, but it's not terrible cheating, because again we have vayud and he, past tense verb, past tense what? Badal, which now it messed you up. here, ignore this over here, but when I clicked the whole word vayavdel, it gave me badal, verb to divide, to separate, which is what we had prior. Where do we have this prior? Right over here. And God said, let there be a rakia in the midst of the water, and it shall mavdil. Here's the shorsh, bet, dalid, lamet, divide, right? We had it prior to that as well in verse 4. In fact, we had this exact word, vayavdel Elohim, and God divided or separated. That was with the light. That God saw the light, that it was good, or because it was good, like we said then. Go back to that class. And God divided between the light and the darkness. So there it is, vayavdel, and he divided. So now we have it here. And God made the rakia, vayavdel, and he divided, and he separated, or by the way, it could, the vayud and he could also be an it. Like we said, this is third person masculine, so it could refer to an it as much as it can refer to a he. So it could be God made the rakia and it divided, right? Who divided? God divided or the rakia divided? Well, presumably the rakia divided, right? Because that's what he created the rakia to do. So God made the rakia and it divided. Bain hamayim. Okay, so we have bain. Anyone remember bain? Who remembers bain? And this, remember, between, right? Yeah. Bain, that has the yud between the letters bet and nun. If we would take that yud out, the word bain, bet, nun would mean son, as in child. But my little mnemonic, right? If the yud goes between the bet and the nun, then the word means between. So bain, between, and it divided between hamayim, very obvious, the water. Asher, did we have the word asher before?
It's which or that.
Right, you could see it over here. So yeah, we could go with that. So that, so and it divided between the water that, and then we have mitachat. Okay. So as the Sefaria reveals on the side here, the word tachat means under. There is a implied state of being verb, which is very common in biblical Hebrew, the implied state of being. So between the water that is, or that was, under. Now the mem prefix here, which means very often from. So you want to say the water that is from under. It's really, you have to sort of excuse it in the Hebrew idiom. Again, very often directional words, as we'll see, will begin with the prefix mem, which typically means from, but it really just indicating a direction. So between the water, see, in English, you really wouldn't have like a word to substitute that. So I wouldn't even translate this prefix here. Between the water, that implied state of being verb is or was, under, mitachat, under what? Larakia. Okay, so again, under, we're tempted to say like under the rakia, right? So what is the lamed doing there? It's the same thing. Lamed, which means to, and the mem, which means from. In this context, these prefixes are sort of indicating relative direction. So mi tachat la rakia, we're indicating the position of the water relative to the rakia. So it's described as from under to the rakia. It just doesn't work in English. It's from under to the rakia. It sounds weird in English, right? But it indicates that the water is underneath the rakia, which is above it. Okay, so God created the rakia, and it divided between the water that was, or that is, under the rakia. Truth is, it couldn't be was, right? Because before there was a rakia, it wasn't under the rakia. It only is afterwards, right? Between the water that is under the rakia, uvein hamayim, and between the water, asher, that may al la rakia. So you have the same setup here, where the word al, what does the word al mean? Anybody know?
On or over.
Honor, on, right. Al is on or over. And the mem sort of, it's the directional mem that is on or over la rakia, right? It's from on to the rakia. Doesn't work in English to translate it that way, but it's giving you relative position. That is above, over, on. Here, on, upon, above. See? The rakia. And God made the rakia, and it divided between the water that is under the rakia and between the water. And remember what we said before about between. We had it with the light. When it says, and God divided between the light and between the darkness, you don't repeat the preposition between in English. You just say between the light and the darkness. But the biblical idiom is when something is between, you use the word between for both items that it's between. Bein ha'or, between the light, uvein ha'choshech, and between the dark. Okay, that's the idiom. The word bein is used in front of both things that it's between. So the same thing over here. It's between the water that is above the rikia and between the water that is between the water that is under the rikia and between the water that is above the rikia. Okay, any questions on that so far before we do the last two words? Well, there's some comments here. Golden Gun, rakia, usually translated as firmament, I think is a hard one to explain exactly what that is. So, Golden Gun, we spoke about this more in the previous class on verse 6 when the rakia is introduced. So, if you want to hear what we said about it, go back to that class. Okay, but long story short, we concluded that the consensus opinion, I'm not saying it's the only opinion, but I would say the majority opinion from the commentaries that I've seen and what I believe to be the plainest meaning is essentially the atmosphere that divides between the water above, the water below, that's within the, right, that's essentially the waters that are down here on earth versus the waters in the sky, which are the clouds. Now, we'll run into some trouble with that eventually, but for now, that's the plainest meaning. John Volkov is here. Hello, John. T. Bishop. Ma isn't what is. So I'm not sure what you're asking. Maybe you could clarify your question, Trey. Back to the verse, okay? Again, and God made the rakia, and it divided between the water that is under the rakia and between the water that is above the rakia. And now we have vayhi chen. So vayhi, we had it before. Where do we have it? Right in the beginning. Not so much in the beginning, but verse 3, where we had this. Vayomer Elohim yehi or, and God said, may there be light. Vayhi or, right? And there was light, because it's the and we have the right prefix vav and prefix yud it, right, masculine third person, and here it's past tense, and it, and then you have the verb hey yud from the shorish hey yud hey, meaning to be. So it past tense, it was, and it was light, or you could say, and the light was, and the light came to be, and there was light, however you like to express that. But that's the idea of the state of being, verb past tense. So vayhi, and it was. So we'll have it here again. Vayhi, and it was Cain. All right. Here it's Cain. Those who know how to read Hebrew. So, you have the word Cain, like it's spelled over here, kaf nun, and a kaf would be written with a dot in the middle that indicates the hard k sound. And without the dot, it's a sound. It doesn't change the meaning. The only reason that the dot drops out of the word is because it's following a letter that ends with yud. And that's a complicated rule that I don't want to go into, but what I mean to do is I'm just brushing aside So you shouldn't be confused. This is the word Cain. The kaf is softened to a chaf because it follows this letter yud, and that's something we don't need to get into. But the previous word ending with yud softens the letter that comes after it, so it loses the dot. It becomes a soft chaf sound rather than a hard kaf sound. The word, so it reads as chain, but it's actually the word Cain. Okay, and if I would ask you to translate the Hebrew word Cain, you would probably tell me what? So normally, especially in modern Hebrew, the word Cain or Ken, right? The first word you learn in Hebrew means yes. Ken velo, right? Yes and no. So it does mean that. It does mean that. However, it also means something else. And I'm trying to find the best way to explain it. Here, just in context, by he Cain is like, and it was so, like here it says, so, it was thus, just so. The idea of Cain, it means something that's essentially firmly fixed, like firmly fixed and established. It's like something firmly established is Cain. Okay. So when you want to give an affirmative, the word for something being affirmative, like, yes, it is so, the word Cain expresses that affirmative. So in modern Hebrew, Cain means yes, it expresses the affirmative of something, right? So something which is firmly established is Cain. I'll give you some examples of where this comes up. In the tabernacle, it talks about the laver. Now, most of you probably don't know what a laver is. The laver is the water basin, okay? In Hebrew, it's called the kior, the water basin. So they had this water basin made out of copper, and the priests would wash their hands and feet there before they would do the service in the tabernacle. So this is called, when they're constructing it, the Torah describes it as et hakior, right? Et, the object, the kior, the laver, the et kano, and it's kano, which I can show you the word, but I don't have the citation to navigate to the verse immediately. But kano is spelled like this. Like you see the word Cain here, it's spelled kaf nun. It's spelled kaf nun vav, kano. And that vav at the end is the suffix that means his or its. So the kior and its Cain. The kior and its Cain, not K, not C-A-N-E, although I wouldn't be surprised. No. The English word Cain, I do not believe is related to the Hebrew word Cain. I'll tell you what it is, what it's definitely related to in Hebrew, but that'll be a tangent. Remind me after. Where does the English word Cain come from? It's a Hebrew word. I guarantee it's a Hebrew word. That's not this Cain, though. So the kior, the laver, and its Cain. What is a Cain? In that context, the Cain is its base. Okay, the basin, which is essentially a container of water, sits on a base. So the base, where the basin is sitting on top of, is called the Cain. It's the base. It's the firm base, right? It's the thing that's firmly established, is the Cain. Where else do you see this? You'll see this in the Hebrew word nachon. If you ask someone, you want to tell someone they're correct in Hebrew, the word for correct in Hebrew is nachon. How is nachon spelled? I should use my little notes file just to demonstrate some of this. Let me get my notes. Genesis notes. Okay. Remember these notes? So I'll show you what I'm talking about with the word Cain. Like I told you, the kior of et kano would be spelled like this. Come on, switch to Hebrew. There we go. No. Okay. So that this part, the kaf nun part, would be the word Cain. And this part, this vav, which is a suffix, highlighted in blue, means his or its. The laver and its base, its firm footing, as it were. And now I was telling you about the word nachon. Let me get rid of the highlight. the word nachon. Nachon. So you could see in the word nachon, again, it's rooted in these same two letters, kaf and nun. Okay. Nachon means correct. It's like something that's firmly rooted in fact. It is nachon. It is correct. But the word nachon also means to be firm and prepared. The Hebrew root to prepare. If you know if anyone knows how to say to prepare in Hebrew, the word is lehit konen. Here's to prepare in Hebrew. Lehit konen. Okay, so there's a lot of letters here, but this is two, lamed, two. The heat is part of the binyan. We talked about binyanim before. The conjugal form, which is called the reflexive form, heat pa'el. Heat pa'el, I know I'm doing a little bit of information overload, bear with me. Heat pa'el, which is the reflexive form, that means to act upon oneself. So this is part of that conjugation. And then I'm conjugating this root, kaf, nun, and really the clue here is that the full root, the full three letters of the root would be kanan. It would have two nuns, okay? But we don't need both nuns for the verb. So lehit konen is to root oneself firmly, to establish oneself firmly. This is the Hebrew word for to prepare. When you prepare yourself, you make yourself firm and ready and steady. Lehit konen, to prepare. Even the word nachon in Hebrew is used not only to mean correct, but to mean firmly established. Like in the verse in the Psalms, nachon libi Elokim. Let me see if I could find that. It's in a bunch of places in the Psalms. I just Googled it. One of them is Psalm 57, verse 8. So I'll show you that. Psalms. Here, there's a Safari tab I just opened up. Go to the Psalms. Psalms 57, verse 8. Okay, here. Nachon libi Elohim. Nachon libi. And just to show you, I'm not making it up. How does it translate it into English? My heart is firm. Oh, Rabbi Mahler was telling the truth. Even Safaria agrees with me. Even JPS 1985 agrees with me. And I don't love that translation. My heart is firm, oh God. Nachon libi Elohim. Nachon libi, my heart is firm. So again, nachon, from this root, the kaf nun root, meaning to be firmly established. But the word nachon in Hebrew, for people who know Hebrew, also means correct. If someone's correct, say nachon, correct, nachon, right? Because it's firmly established. In fact, it's correct. I think those are enough examples. So that's why the word Cain, which means yes, I affirm that it is so. Affirmative, Cain. But it also means a base, the firm foundation of something. Lehit konen, to prepare, to make it firm. Nachon, correct, affirmed. Okay, so now we'll go back to the verse here. Vayhi chen, and it was translated, and it was so, means, and it was established as such. Okay, and it was so, and it was thus. But why is that the word for it? Because there's the word Cain means sort of established firmly. Okay, so again, the whole verse 7, and God made the Rakia, and it divided between the waters that are under the Rakia and between the waters that are above the Rakia, and it was so. Okay, more or less. Oh, how does Safaria translate it? God made the expanse. Oh, not bad. The expanse. He doesn't even say firmament. Okay, I gave JPS 2 compliments today. I'm being very generous. And it separated the water which was below the expanse from the water which was above the expanse, and it was so. Okay, pretty good. Fine. Any thoughts, any comments, any questions? Okay, I want to look at the YouTube comments here. He says the prefix. You had said this, Trey. Ma isn't what is, and then I asked you for clarification. You said the prefix. So now I think I know what you're addressing. I was talking about mitachat, that there's a mem prefix in front of the word tachat, which means under, and a mem prefix here, me'al, in front of al, which means above. And I said in this case, there's no real translation for it. It's just indicating relative direction. And you are understanding the mem prefix to be like the Hebrew word ma, which means what. So the way you understood the verse is between the water, asher me is like what is or that is above, below. That's inaccurate. Okay, the word asher in this case means that between the waters that are, and the mem has nothing to do with it. The word ma that you are asking about, meaning what, is an independent word. It's not a prefix. It's spelled mem hey like you spelled it, and it's unrelated to this prefix mem. So if that was your intention, I hope I've answered that. Like you said, like in, for example, me'al. So unrelated to the word ma, meaning what. So Golden Gun looks like he was trying to answer you. Mem is a prefix, usually from, correct? The word ma is what? Correct. Both correct. And they're unrelated to each other. Al is on, right? So he says, right. So my conclusion is what is over on. So that is not the correct reading. And I hope I've explained why that is not the correct reading. But I like your enterprising spirit in trying. The mayim, the ramia, you mean the rakia, between the maximum below, is that supposed to be it? And above it? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Chain, which we explained in this case is Cain, I would say thus. Yeah. Thus. Kind of explain that. I've been saying it Ken like Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's fine. Yeah. So you have to excuse to a certain degree my pronunciation because I'm very biased by my Ashkenazic Hebrew background. So the vowel underneath the chaf here, which is the two dots side by side, for Ashkenazim is an A sound. In Sephardic Hebrew and modern Hebrew would be like an S sound. So it'd be Ken or Chen. For an Ashkenazi like me, it would be Chain or Cain. So I would, like Bain, you might pronounce it Ben, and so on and so forth. I'm just going to do that because that's kind of my natural way of pronouncing. Even when I speak modern Hebrew, the truth is when I speak modern Hebrew now, I've developed enough of an Israeli accent that I could mimic their accent really well. But if I'm kind of in my natural American sounding Hebrew, I'm going to kind of default to some of the Ashkenazic pronunciations. And all us Americans who go to Israel and start talking, we all talk like this, and so all the Israelis laugh at us. But if I wanted to, I could pass for an Israeli. It just takes more effort. Fine. So let's go on to the next verse because we have some extra time. And stop me at any time, of course. Okay, so verse 8. I can read it with the cantillation. Vayikra Elohim larakia shamayim vayhi erev vayhi voker yom sheni. So here we have Vayikra Elohim. So again, verb form vayud, and he past tense, subject God. This verb kuf resh aleph, you see in the Sefaria to cry call. We had this earlier. Where did we have it? If anyone remembers, you could blurt it out. We had it right here in verse 5, that it said, Vayikra Elohim la'or yom, and God called the light day, v'lachoshech kara laila, and to the darkness he called night. Remember that? So we had this verb, kufresh aleph kara, to call. So here's that verb again, just like in verse 5. And God called. Verse 8. And God called. Larakia. So 2, lamed is 2 with the a vowel underneath it, adds the definite article to the, and God called to the rakia. But as we explained when we had the same phenomenon in verse 5, and God called to the light, doesn't mean he called to it like, hey, light, come over here, I got something to tell you. It means he called it as in he, as we saw there, he pronounced a name upon it. Same thing here. He's pronouncing upon it a name. He called the light day. Here, he calls La Rakia to the Rakia, meaning he pronounces upon the Rakia a name. And the name he pronounces upon it is Shamayim. Shamayim, as you see over here, and we had it in verse 1, is heaven, heavens, sky, right? So he calls the firmament, the expanse, he calls it sky. Isn't that nice? I know this raises a question, so hold the question. You know what? If you want to ask a question, ask a question. I'll pause here before we get to the second half of the verse. And God called the Rakia Shamaim, heavens, sky. Any question on that? So I think the obvious question is, what are you talking about? I already had the heavens in verse 1, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. God created the heavens and the earth. So Shemaim is already here. And what exactly is it? Is it heavens? Is it sky? Are these the same thing? Are they different things? So I think these are all good questions. These are all mysterious. So what are your thoughts about this? The fact that Shamayim appears in the first verse as being created, and then over here suddenly in verse 8, okay, here in verse 8, God calls now we're on the second day, right? And God is calling the Rakia Shamayim, heavens or sky. Is that a contradiction?
No, because I think in the first verse it just says that he created it. It doesn't say he actually called it that. So maybe he's naming it in this way.
Okay, excellent. So this is the view of some of the commentaries that the problem with it being created is it seems like we created it now on the second day. We had the Rakia created on the second day, right? So how could he have, if the Rakia is the sky or is the Shamayim, sky heavens, we'll have to figure out which one it is. Are they the same? Are they not the same? And that was present on the first day. Then how could it be present on the first? Even if you want to say, oh, it was present, but it wasn't named that yet, and here he named it. But what do you mean? It says here he made it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He made it on the second day, or he made it on the first day?
Yeah, it's tricky because in English, our understanding of sky is basically our atmosphere, which is below the heavens. The heavens are more the universe. So it's kind of the same word for two different concepts in English.
Okay, good. So I'm gonna respond to what you're saying. Correct. What we need to acknowledge is in Hebrew, the word Shamayim has multiple meanings. And I'm going to tell you 3 of them right now because you brought up 2 of them. Okay. One is, as we see in this verse, at least according to the way we've understood it thus far, the atmosphere of our planet is the sky, which is sometimes called the heavens. Look to the heavens and see, and we imagine blue skies with white clouds, and we don't necessarily mean a spiritual realm. We mean the physical sky, and we still call it the heavens. And it's called sky. It's called Shemaim in Hebrew. As you brought up, however, in addition to that, there's the cosmos, outer space, which is above our atmosphere, is also called in Hebrew Shamayim, and in English, the heavens. We wouldn't call it the sky in English, but we would call it the heavens. And that in Hebrew is also Shamayim. And they're 2 different things, but the same word is used for both. And the third meaning is something I hinted to, which is the spiritual realm, that we say beyond the physical universe. there is a spiritual realm. And that spiritual realm is also called heaven in English. They call it heaven or heavens, and it's not plural for no reason. Just like someone mentioned last time, there's like different layers of the atmosphere, and the commentaries talk about different. I'm using the word layers very loosely. Layers of the cosmos, meaning they talk about when Hebrew what are called the galgalim. Galgalim in Hebrew literally means wheels. Okay, but the idea is that the orbits of the planets are called, sometimes in Kabbalistic literature, they're called sefirot, which it's like the word sphere in English, but it refers to both the physical rotations of the planets, but also these spiritual layers, as it were. They talk about the galgalim, which are these. Again, literally, it means like spheres or rotations that as you go into outer space, you have the solar system and the different planets, and then you have the space outside the solar system. And so I'm trying to articulate it the right way, but there's sort of different depths of outer space that could be referred to as multiple heavens. You have our solar system, and then you have the galaxy, which turns, and then you have outside of the galaxy and other galaxies. So there are many heavens, as it were. And then there's a spiritual realm, which is also likewise made up of multiple layers. There's higher spiritual levels and higher levels and higher levels. And these are all heavens, and these are all shamayim. So I'm giving you three simple meanings, is that shamayim could be the sky, shamayim could be outer space, and shamayim could be the spiritual realm. They're all kind of spoken of in Tanakh, and they're all called shamayim. So when we talk about shamayim that was created on the first day, the simplest understanding, though we could work, I think we already spoke about two. It could be shamayim and aretz on the first day are the creation of the spiritual world and the physical world, okay? Because the spiritual world is also a creation. That doesn't exist intrinsically. Only God's infinite, unlimited essence, completely unified essence, which we cannot understand, comprehend, define, or describe, is completely beyond creation, let's say. But the spiritual realm is also a creation, and relative to the physical realm, that could be described as shamayim, heaven, and maybe aretz, which means earth or land in a literal sense. In that context, could mean the physical realm. God created the spiritual world and the physical world. Another understanding, which we spoke about early in the series, was it could mean it refers to the cosmos and the planet Earth. Here, we're getting a more limited meaning of it, which in this context seems to be the sky itself. The sky itself. So that first shamayim is either the spiritual world or the cosmos, and this shamayim is a different shamayim. It's the atmosphere. It's the sky. Now, if you've been paying attention to the series until now, you'll see this is very consistent, because even in the previous creation of light and dark, we have light created, and then God calls light day. Now, light isn't only day. Light is a prominent feature of the day, and the day is demarcated by light, but the light isn't day, and the day isn't exclusively light. However, there's light, and then there's an application of light that God is calling day for the reasons we spoke about in that class. That doesn't take away the definition of or light, meaning also something that's not just limited to the day, right? If I turn on the light at night, it doesn't become day, and yet there's still light. Or if I light a candle or whatever it is. But the period that is dominated by light is called day. That's an application of light. So the word light there is used and called day, but that's not to take away from light its other meaning. And then we saw even within that verse, here, let me bring it a little higher. that it says the light is called day, which means daylight. Daylight, we say in English, daylight. So daylight time is known as day, and it says darkness was called night. So everything that's dark is night. If I go into a room and shut the door and shut the shades and turn off the lights and it's dark, it's night now? No, darkness isn't night. And night isn't the only exclusive definition of darkness. And I could turn a light on in the night, but it means that the period that is dominated by darkness was called night. And then in that same verse, it says, and there was evening and there was morning one day, which means it's defining both the period of evening and the period of morning, or you could say a period of darkness and a period of lightness collectively as a single day. And we do that in English too, where we talk about a 24-hour period as a day, but we'll also say during the day versus during the night, where we talk about a period of the day as day. So there's the global day and there's the more limited application of day. Light has different applications. The word light in Hebrew has different applications. The word day in Hebrew has different applications. And the same way that we're seeing within these verses that the same words can be applied differently to mean different things with the same word is how the text is also using the word shamayim to say that, yeah, there's a shamayim we heard about on the first day. And now I'm taking that word shamayim and I'm applying it over here differently than over there, so that Shemaim will refer to both things, but depending which one I'm referring to, I mean something different with the same word. But because of their similarity, so therefore I can share the term. Another way to express this, which I said earlier in the series, we talk about days and things like that, is that in the process of creation, there are things that are going on a sort of cosmic or macrocosmic level, on a very large level. And then there are similar processes occurring on a macrocosmic, miniature, smaller level. So, cosmic days versus earthbound days. You have cosmic light versus earthbound light. You have cosmic Shemaim versus earthbound Shemaim. That everything that begins to happen on this little world that God is preparing for mankind's habitation is a reflection of, or like a model of, the larger universe that God is creating. So we have smaller representations within our more limited environment that reflect larger things in the creation. Light, sky, right? Heavens, and day, and so on and so forth. So I'm just pointing that out, that just because the word Shemayim appears in verse 1, saying God created it in the beginning, and now on the second day he calls the Lrki'a Shemayim, is not a contradiction. We see this all over the text, that these words are given multiple applications. That's one application of Shemayim. This is a more limited application of Shemayim, and that is consistent. That's consistent.
I just got to thinking, excuse me, Rabbi Mullet. I just got to, when you're talking about that, and if you think of the atmosphere, I mean, if you think about like the earth itself, that you have the atmosphere, the hemisphere, the atmosphere, the stratosphere, and it keeps going to different spheres as is, when like in creating, and I kind of picture that with each creation, these different, you know, does that I just kind of was thinking about that as you were going, like it was building with I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm waiting for you to complete the thought.
Well, I'm not very, I'm not with science, but I was thinking about, just how with each, I don't know, I'm not very good about putting my words into sentences. Um,
Yeah.
with, I mean, the thoughts all rush in. It's just putting it in a coherent, uh, you know, sentence or phrase. But just the whole time, it's with each speaking, I'm seeing these layers of, like,
Very good, very good. You're 100% correct. And you said something very deep. It's so deep that words cannot really encapsulate what your mind is thinking. And but you are saying the right things. The spheres and the layers and all that stuff is covered in the Kabbalistic literature when they talk about sphirot, which are these spiritual layers, as it were. But like you can hear in the word sphirot, the English word sphere, and there's these concentric levels that we see built into the physical creation, the concentric circles or concentric spheres, as it were. And we also find that in the spiritual realm, there's also this idea of concentric spheres. And you talked about the sayings. There are the sages identify in the creation narrative what are called asara ma'amarot, or 10 sayings, 10 times that God says, let there be, so to speak. And they relate those 10 sayings to what are called the 10 sphirot, these 10 divine so-called, I'm using some of the terminology that's used, can't really express it, divine emanations, these like spiritual forces that God used in the construction of the universe. We talked a little bit about it with God speaking the world into creation and the letters of creation. So the Sefer Yetzirah goes into this, one of the very early Kabbalistic works. The 10 spheres and the 22 letters. These numbers are very significant, and this is not the forum to go into it. But you're saying things far deeper than you know. Your brain is connecting to things that is very hard for you to express, but you're on the right track. But that being said, it's not the subject of this class. I did want to return to another point I made, because I said something about, we were talking about the Hebrew word Cain or Ken, like someone said before, and I kind of mentioned the English word Cain, Kane, and I said it's not related, even though you think of like a cane, you have an old man with a cane and it's helping him to walk firmly, right? So is that the same? It's actually not. Although I have to also confess that it may be peripherally related. I don't know if we have so much time or interest to discuss what the relationship might be, but I'll tell you what Hebrew word it clearly, obviously is. There's a Hebrew word, kaneh. Okay, let me write it up for you in my little notes file. Okay, the Hebrew word kaneh is written like this. How do I get rid of the highlight there? Okay, it's written. No, give me Hebrew, like this. Okay, hopefully you can read that word, kaneh. Okay, a kaneh means a reed, as in a stick. So it comes up. It's a very interesting. I'm gonna lose half of you right now. But in the book of Samuel, King Saul makes everybody swear not to eat on the day of the battle with the Philistines, but his son Jonathan doesn't hear this, so he fights and he's like famished and he needs to eat. He's like starving, and it says he finds something in Hebrew. It's called Ya'arot Devash. Ya'arot Devash is what he finds. Now, Devash people know as honey, right? Ya'ar in Hebrew means a forest. So Ya'arot Devash, if you were to translate it literally, he found forests of honey. Now, what in the world is forests of honey? Now, I think if you looked in most English translations, and people who are familiar with the book of Samuel might click what I'm saying right here, I think most familiar translations people know is honeycomb. That a honeycomb is what's called in Hebrew, Ya'arot Devash, honeycomb. And he found the honeycomb and he ate it, right? However, that is not Rashi's understanding there. Rashi says that Ya'ar, even though it's sometimes translated as forest, is also synonymous with what he says, reeds. I think he says Lashon Kaneh, meaning he says a Ya'ar is another word for a Kaneh. Okay? So Ya'arot Devash means he found honey reeds. Now, what are honey reeds? So Rashi says Devash over there doesn't mean honey. Now very often Rashi will translate the Hebrew words, as we've even seen, I think, in some of the Rashi comments that we've looked at, maybe in this series, but certainly in many of my other series. He'll translate it into like a French word because he lived in France, sometimes a German word because he was from Germany originally, sometimes he translates into Italian, sometimes into Slavic. He was a man of many languages. And those of you who are following the Ovadia series, now that I said all that, I said France and I said Germany and I said Slavic, very relevant to the next verse, but that's just a tease. But he offers a German word for devash. He said devash, which we normally translate as honey, he says means Zucker. Zucker. He translates into German. Zucker. What's Zucker? Anyone?
Sugar. So
Sugar.
like sugar cane.
Sugar. He says devash, and that's what it is in Yiddish also. Zucker. In Hebrew, sukar. Sukar is sugar in Hebrew. Zucker in German or Yiddish, and sugar in English. So he says there honey means sugar. Devash means sugar, not honey. So what word would you say for a sugar reed?
Sugar cane.
Sugar cane. Ya'arot devash, which he said is a kaneh. So now here's the word kaneh. Now here I'm gonna transliterate it for you in English. Kaneh. Ka. Ne. You see that? The English word cane is actually the Hebrew word kaneh, which means a reed or a stick. Okay? So now that I enlightened you about that was worth the tangent. But that's a Rashi in the book of Samuel, chapter 14, about the war with the Philistines, where Jonathan finds the Ya'arot Devash, translated frequently as honeycomb. Says Rashi, no, not honey, sugar. And what is a Ya'ar? A Ya'ar is a kaneh, a reed. It is a sugar kaneh, a sugar cane. So to open and shut Rashi over there. So now we know what the word kaneh means. That's where the word cane comes from. Isn't that exciting? Okay, so just to review, we had verses 7 and 8 today, and God made the Lirki'a, and it divided, or he divided, really pretty much comes out the same, because God divided using the Lirki'a, right? Or the Lirki'a divided between the water that was below, or that is below the Lirki'a, and the water that is above the Lirki'a, and it was so firmly established, Ken, and God called the Lirki'a Shamayim, heavens, sky. Oh, we didn't finish the verse. Let's finish the verse. Vayhi erev, right? Vayhi, and it was erev, evening. Vayhi voker, and it was morning. Yom sheni. So really, we should spend a little more time on sheni. We're out of time. Yom sheni. So yom is a day, as we know. Sheni, it says here second, but I really want to talk about why that is. Do I have a minute? It's really a little over time. But I want to just finish it off. So I'll do it as quickly as I can. I won't spend more time on it like I might have usually been more in depth, but I'll do it a little quickly. So the word sheni is based on the Hebrew number. Nope. Shenayim. Okay. Nope. Shenayim. Shenayim means two. Echad, one, like we had Yom Echad, one day. Shenayim means two. But when I use numbers in a sequence, and this is what I'm saying now is specifically masculine. When we get to feminine numbers, it's different. But because Yom is a masculine day, we're dealing with masculine numbers and masculine sequence. So I would have, if I had more time, talked about masculine numbers and feminine numbers. Masculine numbers in sequence and feminine numbers in sequence, but we don't have time. So I'm just going to do this number in sequence. When we do sequence, what we do is we add a suffix to it that looks like, that. Okay. This chirik, the E vowel, followed by a yud. And that suffix, when we're dealing with numbers in sequence and many other words that will have this suffix, it's like saying of or having to do with. Okay, so having to do with the number 2 becomes the word that we have in the verse, which is she ni. Okay, the shnayim turns into she ni. And just to give you a few more examples, shilosha, which means 3. And you're going to ask me why is it looks like a feminine number because it ends with a kamatse, which is a feminine ending. And I'm telling you, it's a masculine number. Great question. Ask it when we have more time. For now, we're working with the fact that this is the masculine number 3. So when I want to say 3 in sequence, it becomes this. She, li, she. Okay. And I know it's not. Well, I'll use an easier example. Let's go straight to 5. The number 5, chamesh. 4 is a little tricky. The number chamesh, 5, becomes cha, mi, shi. Okay, so the main point I want to bring out is you can see there's kind of another template forming here of the shlishi, chamishi. We'll have that with number 4, rivi, and so on. But the number 2 is a little bit different than the rest. We'll have to get to that when we get to the other numbers. But for now, what I functionally want you to know is that the Hebrew masculine number 2 is shnayim. I don't want to say 2 in sequence, as in second. First would be 1 in sequence. And shnayim, second in sequence, is we stick this E on there. It becomes sheni. We drop the im ending, and we put the E on there, sheni. So this word in the verse, right? Yom Sheni, a second day, okay? And God called the Rakia Shamayim, and there was evening and there was morning, a second day. And that's the end of that translation. It's a little late, so I do have to go. Otherwise, I would entertain some questions. But any lingering questions or comments, you can email me at rabbi@rabbirafimallet.com. Likely what I will ask you to do is to contact me through WhatsApp, but we can trade that information via email. I don't want to give it out on YouTube. So if you want to reach me through email, and to be continued next Tuesday, God willing. Also, and this coming Sunday is the next Ovadi class, verse number 20, second to last verse, a doozy. Very exciting, highly recommended. So, fine, that's about it for tonight.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, so I see people who left comments in the YouTube comments, but I just have to go. I need to be respectful to my family. So email me if I didn't get to an important comment that you wanted me to respond to. Okay? And maybe I'll respond to it in the class. Maybe I'll respond to you privately. Just we'll play it by ear. Okay? Thank you all for coming. Have a great night, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.